Lao Tzu once wrote, "He who clings to a thing will lose it." A phrase that seems simple, yet hides a truth that can shatter relationships, crush desire, and turn love into desperation. Think about it. Have you ever held on too tightly to someone? Have you ever tried to love so desperately that the very act of holding made them slip further away? Why does clinging destroy what we want to keep? And why, in the realm of love, does neediness often drive people apart instead of pulling them closer? On the surface, it sounds like a warning about attachment. But in love, it becomes something far more dangerous. Because when we cling, we do not love. We grasp, we control, we suffocate. And what we fear to lose most slips right through our hands. Friedrich Nietzsche hinted at this truth when he said, "He who loves least controls the relationship." Khalil Gibran echoed it in The Prophet. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. And the mystic Rumi whispered, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even if spring comes late." All of them are pointing to the same truth. Desperation is the enemy of love. What begins as devotion can become obsession. What begins as closeness can become captivity. And what begins as love can wither into fear. In this video, we'll dive into the wisdom of Lao Tzu and the echoes of great thinkers who came after him. We'll uncover why clinging destroys attraction, why space and mystery give love its power, and why the most magnetic kind of love is born not from fear of loss, but from respect for freedom. Over 2,000 years ago, in the valleys of ancient China, a warning was spoken that still echoes across time. Lao Tzu, the sage of the Tao Te Ching, declared, "He who clings to a thing will lose it." These words were not idle poetry, but a truth shaped by the fragility of kingdoms, the rise and fall of rulers, and the human tendency to destroy what we hold too tightly. What did Lao Tzu mean? To cling, he suggested, is to smother. The more desperately one tries to hold on, the more inevitable the loss becomes. It is like grasping sand in your fist. The tighter the grip, the faster it escapes. This was not simply a proverb, it was a law of survival. In power, in wealth, and in love, the same outcome repeats itself. Obsession leads to ruin. History is littered with reminders of this truth. Emperors who built their thrones upon fear, only to watch rebellion tear them apart. Lovers whose jealousy turned affection into chains, breaking the very bond they fought to preserve. Leaders who hoarded their power so tightly that they provoked the very downfall they sought to avoid. In every case, the warning stands. To cling is to lose. To love something so desperately that life without it seems unthinkable is to summon the very loss one fears. If this warning has haunted kings, empires, and lovers for centuries, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for you? If you hold too tightly to love, to someone, to something you cannot release, are you not already on the path to losing it? Why ancient teachings about detachment remain relevant in love today. Thousands of years ago, sages warned us about clinging too tightly. Lao Tzu in China, the Stoics in Rome, they all said the same thing in different words. Attachment brings suffering. Now, you may wonder, what does that have to do with you, here and now? After all, you're not a king guarding a throne, you're not a general fighting for empires, but the truth is, you're fighting battles of your own, not with armies, but with emotions, not for land, but for love. And here's where it matters. When you cling, when you hold on so desperately because you fear losing someone, you're stepping into the same trap the ancients warned about. Their wisdom survives because human nature hasn't changed. The battlefield may be different, but the lesson is the same. You cannot keep what you're afraid to lose. The paradox of love. Holding on too tightly makes it slip away. Now let me ask you, have you ever loved someone so much that you feared the very thought of losing them? Did you notice how that fear changed the way you acted? Suddenly, care turns into control. Attention becomes suffocation. You tell yourself it's love, but it feels more like a cage. Here's the paradox. The tighter you hold, the faster it slips away. The very act of clinging pushes the other person further from you. And the more you panic, the more you clutch at them, until the bond itself begins to break under the pressure. That's when the ancient warning comes alive in your own life. He who clings to a thing will lose it. Have you ever noticed it creeping into your relationships? That feeling that you cannot let go, that if you don't have constant reassurance, something will break. That is clinging. It shows up in many forms: neediness, the constant seeking of validation, the fear of silence or distance. At first, it feels like love, but underneath, it's something far more dangerous. It's control dressed as affection, obsession disguised as care. Think about it. The texts you send, the calls you make, the little tests you set for the person you love, do they come from a place of connection or from a fear of losing them? The need to always be seen, to always be chosen, begins to shape your behavior. And here's the terrifying part. The more you cling, the more the relationship itself strains under your grip. Neediness doesn't draw love closer. It pushes it away. Obsession doesn't protect connection. It destroys it. Control is another mask of clinging. It doesn't matter if it's subtle, dictating decisions, manipulating choices, or expecting constant agreement. The act is the same, trying to force something that naturally cannot be forced. And relationships, by their nature, resist control. They are built on freedom, on choice, on mutual trust. When you replace trust with control, you replace love with tension. The psychology of fear. Now, let's go deeper. Why do we cling in the first place? The answer is fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing someone we cannot imagine life without. Fear, when left unchecked, becomes a shadow that follows us into every conversation, every message, every interaction. It whispers in your ear, if I don't hold on, it will be gone forever. And when fear drives your actions, it distorts love into something unrecognizable. Fear breeds desperation. It changes the way you move through your relationship. You start measuring every word, every glance, every pause. Every absence becomes proof that you are at risk of losing them. And desperation, unlike love, has no patience. It has no generosity, it only seeks control, grasping, demanding, suffocating. How desperation replaces love with possession. Here's the terrifying truth. The more desperate you become, the less you are truly loving. Love requires space, trust, and freedom. Desperation replaces all of that with possession. You don't want the person to simply be, you want them to belong to you. Their choices, their attention, even their emotions become yours to command. And the harder you grip, the more they resist. Possession masquerades as devotion, but in reality, it destroys connection. What you think is love becomes the very force that pushes them away. And every time that happens, your fear grows, your grip tightens, and the cycle continues. The more you cling, the more inevitable the loss becomes. The balance of power in love. Every relationship carries a hidden weight, an unspoken balance of power. One person gives more, one person holds back more. One clings, the other retreats. You've seen it, maybe even lived it. The one who invests the most energy, the most effort, the most obsession, often becomes the one with the least control. And this imbalance isn't random. It follows a law of human nature as old as time. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche stripped this reality bare. He who loves least controls the relationship. Cold words, but painfully accurate. The one who needs less, who fears less, who withholds their devotion even slightly, wields the power. Why? Because the other is left chasing, proving, begging to maintain what feels like slipping away. The one who can walk away always holds the advantage over the one who cannot. This is the brutal arithmetic of love's power struggle. When you cling, you hand over control. When you fear loss, you enslave yourself to it. And in doing so, you allow the person who needs you less to decide the course of the relationship. But here's the danger. Love should never be reduced to a contest of control. When it becomes about who loves less, both partners lose. The dance shifts from connection to calculation, from intimacy to strategy. What began as love now becomes a battlefield, with power as the only prize. And here's the tragic irony. The very act of fighting for control is what empties the relationship of love in the first place. What remains is possession, leverage, and silent resentment. Why imbalance makes one partner lose respect for the other. Power imbalances in love rarely appear overnight. They creep in quietly, almost imperceptibly. One partner gives too much. The other takes without awareness. At first, it may feel harmless. Small favors, constant attention, repeated reassurances. But over time, this imbalance begins to shift the dynamic. The one who holds back begins to notice the desperation, the neediness, the grasping. And the seed of disrespect is planted. The psychology of respect. Respect in a relationship is born from a delicate equilibrium. It thrives when each person values the other, yet preserves their own dignity. When one partner clings excessively, constantly seeking validation or control, it signals insecurity. And insecurity, no matter how well-intentioned, diminishes admiration. The partner who maintains their composure, their freedom, their self-possession, can no longer see the other as an equal. They see them as dependent, needy, or even weak. What begins as care slowly transforms into frustration, and then into subtle contempt. The imbalance feeds it. The more one clings, the more the other feels burdened. Every act of desperation, every demand for reassurance becomes a reminder of the inequality. And when respect fades, love alone cannot sustain the bond. Admiration is the glue of enduring relationships. Without it, even affection can feel hollow, forced, or transactional. This is the danger of imbalance. It erodes what you cannot see at first, respect. And once respect is gone, the relationship is no longer a partnership. It is a struggle. The one who clings may love with intensity, but the one who holds back cannot meet it in kind because admiration has quietly slipped away. And in this silent erosion, loss is inevitable. Attraction versus desperation. Why desire shrinks? When we cling, ask yourself this. When someone constantly chases you, always seeks your approval, always fears losing you, how does it feel? Does it inspire desire, admiration, connection, or exhaustion, irritation, even fear? The answer is the invisible trap that has haunted relationships for centuries. The very act of clinging, born from love or fear, can suffocate attraction. Desire under pressure. Desire is fragile. It flourishes when there is freedom, mystery, and choice. But desperation is a force that crushes it. When one partner clings, seeks validation, or tries to control, attraction begins to shrink. It is not a punishment. It is a law of human psychology. No one can feel the spark of desire when it is buried under neediness, obsession, or fear. What you think is love may actually be desperation. And the more you cling, the faster the other partner begins to feel that love is replaced by possession. The admiration that once drew them close begins to fade. Desire is not earned by intensity. It is sparked by balance, independence, and mutual respect. Once those are lost, no amount of affection can recreate it. So now, you must ask yourself, are you giving love or are you giving fear? Are you nurturing attraction or are you burying it under need? The difference may determine whether your bond survives or quietly unravels before your eyes. In today's world, love has a new battlefield. Your phone, your social media, your constant messages. The tools meant to connect us, texting, DMs, endless notifications, have become weapons of desperation. Being always available, always present, always responding instantly may feel like devotion, but in reality, it's a silent killer of desire. The very immediacy that seems to strengthen a bond often erodes the spark that once ignited it. Desire requires distance, mystery, and the chance to miss someone. When someone is always there, always reachable, they become predictable, routine, and ultimately ordinary. The psychology is simple. Humans are wired to value what is scarce, not what is abundant. When your presence is constant, your partner's appreciation and attraction begin to wane, often without either of you noticing. Closeness becomes suffocation. Attention becomes expectation. Love begins to feel like a chore rather than a thrill. Social media amplifies this problem. Every like, comment, and message becomes a subtle test of devotion. Instant replies are interpreted as proof of love, while delayed responses spark anxiety. The desperation to be noticed, to be loved, to be chosen, drives behavior that mimics obsession. And the harder you try to be indispensable, the less space there is for desire to grow. The trap is invisible, yet deadly. By being too present, too available, too desperate, you slowly extinguish the very attraction you sought to nurture. This is the paradox of our age. Technology can connect, but it can also destroy. Desire is not measured by presence. It thrives on scarcity, independence, and subtlety. If you are constantly reachable, constantly showing up, constantly proving your love, the effect is the opposite of what you intend. You are not deepening connection, you are suffocating it. The modern trap of desperation has claimed countless hearts, quietly, invisibly, leaving only frustration, resentment, and lost attraction in its wake. The cost of chasing, emotional fatigue. Ask yourself, how often do you find yourself waiting for a text, refreshing messages, or overanalyzing every interaction? This constant chase may feel like care, like love, but what it really does is drain you. Emotional fatigue creeps in slowly, imperceptibly, until every notification becomes a test. Every pause, a source of anxiety, every response, a measure of your worth. Chasing attention forces your mind into overdrive. Your focus is no longer on connection. It's on control, on reassurance, on proof that you are still loved. The very act of seeking validation replaces the presence of joy, spontaneity, and mutual engagement. You begin to live in reaction, always on edge, never at ease, turning what should be intimacy into exhaustion. And here's the cruel irony. The more desperate the chase, the less appealing you become. Emotional fatigue is visible, even if unspoken. The person you're trying to hold on to senses it subconsciously, and attraction begins to fade. In your effort to secure love, you have unknowingly undermined it. Desire cannot survive constant pursuit. It thrives in balance, freedom, and presence. Qualities that chasing relentlessly destroys. The respect of rarity. Let's return to the warning that started it all. He who clings to a thing will lose it. Lao Tzu's words echo through centuries because they capture a truth too often ignored. Clinging, whether to a person, to a moment, or to love itself, is an act of fear. It transforms devotion into possession, care into control, and intimacy into suffocation. When you grip too tightly, you set in motion the very loss you dread. Love, in its truest form, is not a possession. It is a flow, a movement between two hearts that requires freedom, trust, and balance. To love is not to chain, to dominate, or to demand. It is to give space, to allow growth, to hold lightly enough for the other to return freely. Desire and respect flourish when love flows, not when it is forced into captivity. Remember this: the tighter you hold, the quicker it slips. But the freer you love, the longer it stays. Respect, attraction, and intimacy are born from scarcity, independence, and self-possession. By letting go of fear, by resisting the urge to cling, you do not lose love. You create the conditions for it to endure. In the delicate balance of presence and absence, in the tension between attachment and freedom, lies the secret that every ancient sage, every philosopher, every lover who understood the heart has known. Love thrives in freedom, not in chains. So ask yourself, are you holding love too tightly, suffocating what you fear to lose? Or are you letting it flow freely, giving it the space to grow, to endure, to return? The choice is yours, and the consequences are already unfolding.